Okay, I'm now recording. To all of you watching online, this is a live recording in my class. Class, say hi. Class, say hi. It's a Thursday morning, and they all drove through the torrential snow to get here, so they're not too excited. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to integrate source material into a paper. And what I have here is an outline that we're working on the other day, just like you guys have made. The claim for this paper is that the government shouldn't limit gun rights. One of our because statements, right, these are the reasons for why you believe your claim is true, is because we want to say because people have a right to defend themselves and their property. And so here are some of the pieces of evidence that we've gathered from sources to do that. Real quick overview. If you recall, we found a source about an Oklahoma man who stopped a bar shooting. We have this quote from a journalist pointing out all of the things that had to go wrong for the authorities, how many of them screwed up to allow the what's it called, the Broward County shooting. And then we have some new evidence that I've gathered since then about number of defensive gun uses every year and the number of innocent people killed from guns every year. So this is a draft paragraph, guys. So it is, we're not worried so much about making it sound super awesome right now. What we are worried about is getting the evidence in there, and we can make it sound good in the future in revision. For those of you just walking in, just want to let you know I'm recording this lecture at the moment because I want to have it for my online class too, and for anyone who can't make it here today because it's a very important point. So I'm not going to get too fancy with my language. I'm not in this writing. I'm not going to get too worried about like how it fits into the paper as a whole, because I know this is one of my because statements. This is one of the reasons that supports my claim. So I'm just going to work on writing this mini argument, and this is how I recommend you approach this paper as a whole. Because it's so big, writing 1,700 to 2,000 words can be intimidating. Think of it as writing a bunch of little mini arguments that you will weave together to make a larger claim. So I'm really not going to think too much about my like my topic sentence or my opening right now, because this is just a piece, right? It'll be in the paper later, and then I can worry about transitioning. So I'm literally just going to take my claim and add my because statement, and that's going to be my topic sentence. So I'm just going to write it down here. So the government shouldn't limit gun rights because people have a right to defend themselves and their property. What I am going to start with, so when I was gathering this evidence, I kind of just put it in the order that I found it, but I didn't really consider which order makes the most sense as far as building a case. So I think I'm going to start, when I'm looking at these, I'm going to start with the, it's kind of hard to decide, do I want to start with the guy who did, or do I want to start with the yeah, I think I'm going to start with this source here, and I'll open up the link. Actually, yeah, this is the one from PJ Media, and he's talking about the Parkland shooting with Nicholas Cruz. And so I think because I'm trying to show that that people have a right to defend themselves and their property, I'll start by talking about how you can't always rely on other folks. So so that's what I'll say. I'm going to start with this guy right here, Roger Simon, writing for PJ Media. Sorry, my little thing here is getting in the way. Put it down here. So I'll start. Roger Simon, journalist for PJ Media points out that, and I summarized a little bit here, we shouldn't have to rely on someone else to save us. Have to rely on someone else to save us. In fact, he uses the horrible tragedy at Parkland illustrate that we can't always rely on someone else. Rely on the proper authorities. Can't always rely on the proper authorities to I'll actually, this is a persuasive essay, so I'm trying to be persuasive. So to protect even most vulnerable of us, because this was a school shooting, right? Horrible. And then I'm going to take, this is like a really long quote here, and I know some of you might be tempted to like take this whole quote, and because you think it's all really good and you can't pull out any of it, but really you're just trying to fluff up your paper and get to your word count faster. I think the times you want to use a quote is often when the author's language is really good, right? And this right here, him saying they screwed up on a level that borders on incomprehensible. That's a good quotable piece. But all this other stuff we can probably put in our own words. So that's what I'm going to do. Basically, I'll say Simon notes that the events leading up to Parkland shooting required, what was it? We had school authorities, social workers, FBI, yeah, required all manner of government authorities, even the police department, to, and then I'll drop his quote, and notice how the grammar doesn't fit. It required them to screwed up on a level that borders on. So see how this screwed doesn't fit, it should be screw. You can make changes to the grammar as long as it's not changing the meaning of the quote by putting it in brackets like that. And I'll put my citation after you use a quote or a paraphrase. You can put the page number, the paragraph number. And the other thing that you want to do, here's the date 2018, is when you mention the author for the first time in a paragraph, you put the date right afterwards. Okay, so I've incorporated this source from one of them to show that, basically point out that, we can't always rely on other people to save us, right? I'll do a little transition. The people of the U.S. Yeah, I'll just say the people of the U.S. Have an inherent right to self-defense just as much as we have. Actually, so a right to defend our lives just as much as we have a right to defend our, what are some things we defend? Like our finances, right? From poor economic decisions. And our children from, harmful influences. So I'm not liking the way this sounds right now, but it's a rough draft, so I'm not worrying about that. But I know, like, part of rough drafting is getting your ideas out of here. What I'm trying to do is make an analogy that people have personal responsibility and rights, regardless of whatever they are, right? You get to control your own lives, your own self. So I am going to move on now to talk about this case where a person did defend themselves and others. Let me open that source and let's say contrast the failures of the Broward County officials with recent headlines about, let me find the guy's name. They might not have named him. Yeah, they don't name him, I guess, to keep his identity safe, obviously. So I'll just say, with recent headlines about an Oklahoma man who fended off a shooter at, where's the place? Louis Bar and Grill. Okay. 4 people were injured in the shooting. The only death was the gunman himself, who has yet to be identified. So I'll say, according to a report from the, the Washington Examiner, I'm going to put in a citation here. Since I'm not using the author's name in the sentence, it will go within the parentheses. It's Hashmi. And that's 2018. So according to a report from the Washington Examiner, a armed bystander shot and killed a attacker, a gunman. An armed bystander shot and killed a gunman, keeping the injury total only 4 and the deaths to 0. Again, I do not like the wording here. This doesn't sound like a good sentence to me, but I'm not worrying about it right now because it's my rough draft. I'll make it sound good later. Okay, so I have started defending this because statement by showing that there are failures in the system that mean we have to be able to protect ourselves. Here's an example of someone who did protect themselves. And now I'm going to go into this part here, because just telling a few stories here and there generally isn't enough to convince people, which is why I have data here, numbers that help. So I'm going to start moving to that. So if you look at the information, one of the things says how many defensive gun uses there are every year, and another is talking about how many people die from how many innocent people die from guns every year. So I'm going to start a new paragraph here, and it's okay. One because statement can be supported by multiple paragraphs. That's okay. And what I want to say is, I think I'm going to start with this one here. In order to show basically that more people defend themselves with guns than are killed with guns. So I'm going to start with this this source here. And the way I'm having trouble kind of thinking of a good way to introduce this paragraph, so I'm just going to kind of throw something out there and get into it and worry about revising it later. But basically what I want to say is some people claim that that instances like what happened in Oklahoma are few and far between. They say that a single case of a good guy with a gun isn't enough to justify that, isn't enough to justify the lives, the innocent lives lost to guns every year. Now I'll bring in this part. Fact, Washington Post points out that, I don't think I'll use all the numbers, I think I'll use just this one, that in 2015 and 2018, in 2018, 12,509 innocent people died from guns. Here I'll put my citation. Um, 12,509 innocent people died from guns. Say, while that might seem like an alarming number, it's quite possible that many more lives are saved by guns every year. Now I'll bring in this last source, which was kind of a big study. I'll open this source up. So it's an investigation of defensive gun use, of accounts of defensive gun use. And it's a little old, which I will probably mention in my paper, but there haven't been a lot of big authoritative studies like this. So I'm just going to copy this quote down here so I have it obviously easily in my sight. So it's quite possible that many more lives are saved by guns every year. And then this is, so another thing when you are citing sources, sometimes it's worthwhile mentioning where it was published. This one's published in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology. So it's an academic journal, so making that point in our paper helps to show that we're more credible because we're using credible sources. So I'll point that out, a article, I'll say, in an article published in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology, Fleck and Gertz, I think it's 1995, shared data from the National Crime Victimization Survey. Estimates up to 82,000 cases of offensive gun use in the U.S. every year to protect from crimes such as assault, robbery, and burglary. But here I didn't use the quote, I paraphrased it. So I don't need any quotation marks. Okay, so that, right, that is how you integrate sources, okay? You look at the because statement that you're trying to prove, you use the evidence that you are, that proves it, and you weave it together in the way that makes most sense. Again, the order that I dropped the sources when I was taking my notes is not the order necessarily that I put them in my writing, because the writing process and the research process are two different things. So you're thinking about the information in different ways. Don't feel like each because statement has to be its own paragraph. Organize your paragraph around ideas and around making logical breaks for the reader to have a chance to breathe. And then from there you integrate, use quotes when they work, use summaries and paraphrases most of the time.